Today, Mr. Larry Adderley, also former publicist for the Detroit Tigers, Dan Ewald, and the last gentleman is here today. So I want to ask him to please come up and accept his Lifetime Honorary Membership Award.
Who is it?
It's an unmistakable voice.
Roger Faulkner. Roger, congratulations. Get between us. The DSBA is proud to name Roger Faulkner a Lifetime Honorary Member on this 7th day of October, the year 2014. This action by the Executive Board is the highest honor that can be bestowed by the DSBA. The Detroit Sports Broadcasters Association salutes you, Roger, for your commitment to the organization and your dedicated support of the DSBA events and our charity programs. Congratulations. And not only that, it comes with your new badge. Honorary Lifetime Membership.
Thank you. Nothing like a free one. Thank you
Roger.
very much. Thank you very much, George. I've enjoyed the years here. I came this on.
Okay. First of all, thank you everyone for coming today. Appreciate your time, and we're so glad that you could share this luncheon with us. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is a little bit about the way the DSBA is evolving. Every day our mission grows a little bit stronger toward education. It's become a very important part of what we do as an organization, and what we can do to really kind of help students and programs that are in high school, college, and beyond basically bump up their programs so that they're able to do live video and audio streaming, broadcast their games, to get real hands-on experience. Right now we're in the process of distributing roughly $19,000 to high schools and colleges from Detroit all the way to Escanaba to help with their programs. Part of what we do as part of our grant fund and scholarship program is award scholarships as well. So today we have 4 students from the Specs Howard School of Media Arts with us who have been awarded scholarships this year from the DSBA for their excellence and their drive in trying to pursue careers in sports media. I'd just like all of you to recognize them. I'm going to call them up one by one and give them a certificate today. Thank you, George. First up, we have Elizabeth Crenshaw. Stay up here, Elizabeth. Stephen Lefevre. Congratulations, Stephen. Ryan Rangat. Congratulations, Ryan. Last but not least, Cyrus Raymond. Congratulations, Cyrus. I'd also at this time just like to invite John Yinger to come up, and Ken Cal if he's available right now. I know you just walked in, Ken, sorry. John and Ken just dedicated an awful lot of time and effort to helping in this scholarship process, going through applications, doing interviews, and selecting winners. So please give them all a big round of applause. George?
Yes. Great. All right. Again, thank you so much, and this is such a great part. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the voice of the Detroit Red Wings, and a guy that I used to know at Wayne State University. I'm glad to say we were at the university at the same time when we were growing up and going to college together, and a good friend of mine, good friend of the DSBA, is our past president, Mr. Ken Cal. Ken?
Thank you, George. Hello, everybody. Good to see everybody here today. I know Ken Holland was looking at his watch. I'm a little bit late. I apologize. I just came back from a very, very emotional wedding, believe it or not, midweek. It was so emotional that even the cake had tears. That's why I'm here today, because we have a great program for you today. And First of all, I'd like to have a nice round of applause for all the people in the Forum Club. They help us out so much. Thank you very much for coming. Well, now that the Tigers are off for the year and the Lions are in mid-season form, and now I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. I meant that they're halfway through the season. Anyway, we are about 2 days away now from talking Detroit Red Wings hockey, and the season's going to start on October the 9th. I know everybody's all fired up, right? Each and every year we always have this Red Wing. We're going to talk Red Wings here today. I ask you to have your questions ready, and we're honored and privileged each and every year to have the Red Wings General Manager, Ken Howell, with us. Ken, come on up. And joining us today is the Assistant General Manager, Ryan Martin. Ryan? Now, we're all excited about this new hockey season, and first and foremost, Kenny, thanks a lot for coming back here to our DSBA Red Wing preview, and give us a little preview about what can we expect from this Red Wing team this year.
Well, it's an exciting time of the year. Obviously, probably 30 teams in the league feel that they're going to make the playoffs. I think there's obviously optimism around the league. Our league is coming off a spectacular year last year, best revenues in the history of our league. Great races to make the playoffs, and I think from our perspective, we're proud that we made the playoffs last year for the 23rd straight year in a row. We had a lot of keep people down for long stretches, and I really think that the story of our team last year was calling them the kids or the younger players, or the depth of our organization that really came up the second half of the year and allowed us to play our way into the playoffs. Coming out of the Olympic break, I think we had 22 games, and we knew we had to play our way in, and we played our way into the playoffs, and unfortunately I got beat by a tough Boston team, but hoping that the adversity that we faced last year is going to be a reason why we take a step forward this year.
And Kenny, I know by 5 o'clock today the roster has to be pared down. Did you have some difficulties as far as who's going to make this club when we start in a couple of days from now?
Yeah, and I think we haven't. I'm going back here at 130, 135, 140. I'm going to meet the last couple of people, but we've got to really cut 2 people. Pavel Datsyuk will start the year on IR, but I think we had a real good preseason. I don't look at preseason as wins and losses as much as how you played. I thought, other than the game in Toronto on Friday night, which was a real disappointing game, I didn't think we competed. The other 7 games I thought were good games. What I liked is the last, of the 8 games, the first game of the preseason, we basically played in Chicago. They had their full team. And then the last week, twice against Toronto and in Boston and against Pittsburgh, for the most part, other than 2 or 3 players that missed due to injury, were in the lineup. So we played against some real good rosters. And we had a lot of kids that pushed hard. And I think they're going to continue to push. I think that's what we're trying to do as an organization here. Starting 2 years ago and last year and this year and next year, we're slowly trying to turn this organization over, this team over to the next generation of Red Wing players that's going to hopefully carry us to be a playoff team consistently year after year after year. You can't do it over 1 year or 1 summer or 2 years. The players are young, so. Probably when you look back 2 years ago when we lost, 3 years ago Rafalski, and the next summer we lost Brad Stewart, we lost Nick Lidstrom. We're slow, you look at our defense today, and Dan DeKaiser was a great story as a rookie last year, 24 years of age. I think Brendan Smith really started to come of age last year. He's 25 years of age. This is a tough league, and it's great to be 21 and 22 in the league, but the object, we're trying to compete for a playoff spot. We're trying to compete. Once you get in, you're trying to compete to win a series and 2 series and 3 series. So you slowly got to we don't go to the draft. We don't pick in the top 5. I think our last top 5 pick was in 1991. So the players that we pick, we think they're going to be NHL players, but there's a process to get them from the draft table to where they can actually help you win in the National Hockey League. So I'm excited for the ongoing process, and Peter Mrazek had a great camp, Xavier Ouellette had a great camp, Nick Jensen had a great camp, Nestrasil had a great camp. Some other young players. Disappointed that Anthony Mantha got hurt. He played 3 real good games in the prospect tournament, Traverse City. Hoping here in the next couple of weeks he's back on skates and slowly get the process to get back. So, we're in the process of trying to, again, draft, develop, and move some younger people onto our team. At the same time, at the NHL level, we're trying to compete to be a playoff team and compete with the Tampas and the Bostons and Torontos and all those teams in our division.
I thought maybe you were going to give us some breaking news here as far as the 23-man roster, but that's not right. 2:30, okay. Ryan Martin joins us too, assistant general manager, and boy, we live in a cap world right now. And what's the cap situation like with the Red Wings going into this season?
A little bit different than several years past. We've got cap space, which is nice. The cap went up to $69 million, and we've got a charge this year of about $3 million that comes from bonuses that were earned by a number of players last year. So we're at about $66 million, and we've got about $2 million underneath that, which will be good to have some space to recall players for injuries, whether it be a young goalie or one of our other D or young forward prospects.
Kenny, there's a couple of players that I was able to watch, this young Nestrasil, and I know he played in Grand Rapids, and he had a pretty good preseason camp. Talk about him a little bit and what you like about him, and does he have a legitimate shot at perhaps making this club?
Well, he's a 3rd-round draft pick, and he's a little intriguing because probably the first 2 years he spent a lot of time in Toledo, the East Coast League. Last year he started the season in the American League, on the fringes of the American League roster, and he played real well. As we started to call all these players up to Detroit, Sheehan and Yurko and Glendening and Nyquist and Tatar, he got an opportunity down at the American League level, and about the last 20 games, he was close to a point a game, had a good playoff. So he's worked real hard on his conditioning. I think he's in the best condition of his career, and he's had a real nice preseason. We're going to start. He'll be on our roster tonight at 5 o'clock. We'll see what goes on here over the next few days, but certainly he's had a good preseason. Again, he's 22 years of age. We like where he's going with his career. Is he ready to be in the NHL every day, game after game after game? We'll evaluate that on an ongoing basis, like we always do.
And Ryan, I know you're very busy throughout the course of the year. Tell the people here today about some of the things that you do during the course of the regular season, if you watch players, and also how you help Kenny and how you two work together.
Well, I guess my primary responsibility is the collective bargaining agreement administration. So basically the rules that govern our daily operations with respect to the team rights and the player rights and obligations. So Kenny and I are constantly talking, because the rules come into play when you're dealing with waivers or loaning players to the minors or calling players up, and certainly the salary cap is a big part of that. In addition, I'm the general manager of Grand Rapids, which would be our AAA team at the American Hockey League. So they're actually right in the middle of their training camp now. They're set to open this Friday night at home, and there's still probably 8 or 10 cuts that need to be done there. And I also work with the AA level team, which would be Toledo, which would be the East Coast Hockey League team. And while we don't supply them with every single player like we do in Grand Rapids, we do have our fingerprints on that team enough where I'm constantly in communication with that coaching staff, and Jeff Blashill in Grand Rapids as well works with that coach in terms of calling players up and down between the AA and AAA level. Because as we have injuries up here and some players have to come up from Grand Rapids, the same thing happens between those two levels as well.
Ken, if you have any questions, raise your hand. First question on the right side.
Ken, after all the years in the Western Conference, you've had one full season last year in the East. Could you talk a little bit about how much that was a benefit, not having that West Coast travel so regularly, and how it helped the wear and tear on the organization?
Well, I think the biggest thing in the East, obviously, is shorter flights. Instead of going twice to Western Canada and twice to California, we go once to each place. And those road games, obviously, have moved to the East, so more days at home. I also think, you know, when you work with the schedule maker does a good job that when you do go on those trips, you know, usually there's a period of time to get out there and a period of time after, the odd time you come home and you got a game, but I think, you know, when you look back the last 15 years, 20 years, when we've had lots of playoff runs, and hopefully going forward here, we can figure out a way to start going deeper into the playoffs. You know, you start to think about those years when you went back and forth to Calgary, the next year you went back and forth to Anaheim, and the next year you went back and you were just constantly living on the road. So, you know, certainly last year in the Boston series, you know, when the game was over, game 2, we could jump on a plane and we came home. Wherever you're in the West, you got to stay over because of the time change. The off day, it really is another travel day. It's an all-day travel day when you factor in the 3 hours time change. So less travel, less wear and tear on the players during the regular season, and I'm hoping that it's going to be less wear and tear in the playoffs. But I think we've obviously lost. The other thing, you know, we had some great rivalries in the West. You know, even some of those teams, I think when you play in some of these playoff series, Anaheim Ducks, we played 3-4 playoff series. I think we had a real good, our fans got excited about Anaheim, obviously Colorado all those years. So we've left some good rivalries in the West, and obviously Toronto's a fabulous rivalry that goes back to the beginning of the league. But as we go along here, we start to play the teams in the East more often, and we get into the playoff series and play some of these teams. We're going to really build up some real good rivalries in the East. And the other thing, I think, from a fan's perspective, more road games on in prime time. You know, 7:30, 8 o'clock instead of the starts at 9:30, 10, and 10:30. So I think it's great for our fans and good for our players.
Guys, this question is for both of you. Anthony Mantha, he had a pretty good prospect camp this year. And Ryan, first and foremost, what do you like about Anthony Mantha, and how soon do you think he will be able to make it into the National Hockey League?
Well, I like the fact that he can score goals. It's obviously something that's not very easy to do, and when we're fortunate enough to draft somebody that seems to have that natural ability to put the puck in the net, I think that's a big bonus. He's a big guy, smart player. You know, he's somebody, because he's a late birthday, he really only went back and played 1 year of junior before starting his pro career right now. You know, we're very excited about the possibility of where he's going to end up in the near future. You know, I think initially, certainly coming back from his injury, I think it would be in his best interest and the club's best interest to start him out in Grand Rapids and let him get used to the pro game. You know, coming back from a broken leg, to just start his pro career, it's a little difficult to think he's going to jump right into the NHL and make an impact. But certainly, you know, all signs would point to the fact that we're all positive and excited about the prospect of him starting his pro career, going down to Grand Rapids and having some success. And then as far as when he gets to Detroit, I guess he'll decide that based on his play down there. But we're very excited for him getting back healthy and starting his pro career.
Can you have anything to add about Anthony Mantha?
No, I agree. I think, you know, we were going to give him a real opportunity in training camp to play his way onto our team. As Ryan said, you know, in a league, you look at numbers. If you can score 250 goals and more, you're probably going to be the top 5 teams in the league in goal scoring. Well, you know, we play 82 games. 3 times 82 is 246. You're talking, if you can score a little more than 3 goals a game, you're going to be in the top 5 teams in the league in goals scored. Anthony Mantha has shown, you know, when we drafted him, he had 50 goals in 50 games. He backed up last year with another 50, 60 in the regular season. I think he had 20 plus in the playoffs, helping his team get to play their way to the Memorial Cup. He was named an All-Star in the World Junior Tournament, which happens at Christmas time for players 19 years of age and under. So, you know, he's a top prospect. You know, we haven't had a lot of players. Again, I get back to where we draft these players. In order to get these players to jump right from college and right from junior, right onto an NHL roster and have an impact, we don't pick high enough. But certainly this player that we had with the 20th pick in the draft played higher than his selection. And we were hopeful and optimistic that he was going to make a case to make our team. But as Ryan said, we'll start him out here sometime in early to mid-November. We expect him to be back playing. He'll start out in Grand Rapids, and then we'll evaluate. He's going to need you start to get 3 months behind everybody, it takes you a while to catch up. I don't care how young you are or how good you are. So it's going to take him a little bit of time, and he has no pro experience. So we'll start to watch him when he plays, and if he scores too much for the American League, we'll get him up to the NHL.
Well, the good thing too is you look at Danny DeKaiser, he came in and he was one of those guys that just jumped right in.
Well, and then Danny was 23,
Older,
Anthony's 20 years of age. So, again, it's this is the best men's league in the world. It's a great league. It's hard to make the playoffs. It's hard to play in the league, and it's hard to be a difference maker. And that's what you're trying to develop. You're trying to develop difference makers, and I think that you got to let people kind of grow it at their own pace. And some can make the jump quickly, and others need, whether it's physically, emotionally, or what, they need a little more time to kind of fulfill their potential. So we're trying to create an environment that allows people to fulfill their potential. And again, some fast track, some need more time. And if you knew which ones needed more time, which ones were quicker, we'd probably redo the draft. It's not an exact science because you're dealing with 18-year-old kids, and I'm sure we've all got kids in here. I've got 4 kids. It's hard to know where they're going with their lives when they're 18 years of age. So if you try to create an environment, a positive environment, and allow them to kind of be with their peers and have success, then you move them on to the next level. And if they have success, you move them on to the next level. So. As Ryan said, he's 6'5". He's got a gift that he can score goals at the junior level. Can he translate that now into the national, to the pro level? We believe so. We hope so. We think so. Can he do that right away? Is he going to need a year or two? That's got to play itself out. We're going to watch.
Before I get to the question, it reminds me of our Christmas party last year. I was the recipient of your gift, and it had a bunch of stuff in it, including lottery tickets, and we made a pact that anything I won, we'd split, so here's your $2. Dennis Davidson was standing next to me when that happened. I know he'll tell you I won. So anyways, Mr. Holland, going back to the fans, more of a personal question, I guess. We can see the backlash that Mr. Dombrowski gets from the fans here, and a bad choice, or maybe bringing on the player. How does that affect you? Do you deal with the backlash with the fans if maybe the fans get on you a little bit, or do you just ignore it as a GM, or does it really affect you at all when the fans get on you for maybe bringing a player on too long or not making a right decision?
Well, first off, I think running a sports team has dramatically changed in the last 3 or 4 years due to what you're saying, social media. I really don't read anything anymore. I don't go on in it. I don't read any. I just think it's going to affect the way I think. I count on Ryan Martin, Mike Babcock, Chris Draper, Chris Chelios, Kirk Maltby, Mark Howe, Glenn Murkowski, Bruce Harrelson. I count on our people that are in the field watching, and our the infrastructure that we've built in to make decisions. Are we going to make mistakes? Absolutely. It's not a perfect world. Sometimes you've got some information at hand, and you make a decision, and you find out 6 months later that the information that you had at that point in time, it's changed, it's different. I can't go back in time. I'm not running a fantasy league team. I can't just drop and delete and pick somebody else up, or there's no hockey store that I can sort of walk into and walk in. I need a 40-goal scoring right winger that's 27 years of age and he's physical. We don't have that ability. So, when you make decisions, you got to live with those decisions. You got to work around those decisions. And again, I would say to you that I don't read the media. People are. I'm also not living in a vacuum. I got enough people telling me what's going on out there. Have we made decisions that people aren't happy with? Absolutely. But I don't think it matters who's sitting in this chair. There's going to be other decisions made that somebody else wouldn't like the other decision. It's not an exact science. So that's how I deal with it.
In the back.
Yeah, can you give us an update on injuries, and in particular Pavel Datsyuk?
Oh, Pav's practicing with the team. We're gonna today at 5 o'clock. We put our roster. We'll put him on IR, but the IR is backdated back to the night he got hurt in Pittsburgh in the first preseason game. So, if we get great news on Thursday, he says he can play. He's able to play on Thursday. I don't think he's going to play this week. But I'm going to wait till probably after practice tomorrow to really ask our trainer and our doctor and Pav how he's feeling. I don't go in there every day and say, how do you feel today, how do you feel today, how do you feel today? I think the player then feels pressure to get healthier quicker than he wants to. So at the appropriate times, I ask the question of the trainer, of the doctor, and then you know, is he ready to play? And if they say no, he's not ready to play, well then Mike Babcock and I sit and we figure out what's the next plan. So in Pav's case, I'll get more information tomorrow after practice. I know he's practicing with the team. I don't know what Pav's thinking. I think he's doubtful for Thursday, and if he doesn't play Thursday, it's hard to believe he's going to play on Saturday. The good news is that we have a few days off. The next game is next Wednesday. I always sort of look at a block of games. You know, if you're a player and you're injured, you can't play this day. Hard to believe you're going to play 2 days later, unless you're ramping up, and it's more about a conditioning thing. So, you know, if Pav doesn't play if Pav doesn't play on Thursday, then I think realistically the next time frame we're looking at is next Wednesday game. Is game 3, and if I hear on Wednesday that he's not able to go on Thursday, I'm probably not going to address Pav's situation until next Monday. I'm going to give him those 5 or 6 days to continue the process, and as we start to get into Monday and Tuesday, or Monday, we start to look towards Wednesday's game. Now we'll start to ask the doctors and the trainers again where's he's at. So I think he's doubtful for Thursday, but I'll know for a fact tomorrow after practice.
Rich Kincaid?
Hi, thank you, Ken. Way in the back here, Ken. The green lights are there.
Yep.
Sorry about that. I don't read anything either, Ken, by the way, just for the record. You mentioned a moment ago, if you score 250 goals, you're in the top 5 in the league. Isn't that kind of the problem with the league right now? That the continuing struggle to score goals that we've seen really over the course of the last 10, 15 years?
I don't think so, Rich. I think the bigger problem which was addressed was league changes. And I know that in 2004, right before the break, the work stoppage, that year in the Stanley Cup Finals between Tampa Bay and Calgary, the team that scored first won every game. You know, there's lots of league changes now. So, you know, I think as a fan, you know, obviously I'm a fan of the sport. Would I like to see a little more scoring? Probably a little more scoring, but I also like to know that the outcome is in doubt, and I need to watch 60 minutes to see who's going to win the game or who's not going to win the game. And it's not just we're going to play and whoever scores first is going to win 75% of the time. I don't think scoring first has as big an impact on the outcome as it did 10 years ago. So. You know, I think that we've got to, you know, the other thing that I look for, Rich, is scoring chances. And you know, I remember in 1995 when we played New Jersey in the finals, I think we had 16, 18, 19 shots played against New Jersey. You know, they were big, they were strong, they were running obstruction, we couldn't get to the net. Now, you know, there's more scoring chances, there's lead changes. I think the goaltending in the National Hockey League is the best it's ever been. When you factor in the size of the goalies, Ben Bishop in Tampa Bay, I think he's 6'7". Yeah. He's 6'7". You're getting goalies that are 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". So I look at scoring chances and I look at lead changes to try to from a fan appeal. And I think that there's more lead changes today than there was prior to 2005, and I think there's more scoring chances. Just that the goaltending is so good. So, you know, obviously there's you know, some people have talked about getting a bigger net. I'm a traditionalist. You know, we've got all these stats that have gone on for 100 years, and you know, Gordie Howe's and Bobby Orr's and Steve Yzerman's stats and Wayne Gretzky's and Mary Lemieux's, and we go on and on and on. You know, to all of a sudden now start to make the net bigger. How does those stats figure in? You know, so you know, I think that again, I look at scoring chances and league changes, and I think there's lots of scoring chances with great goaltending, and I think there's league changes that it's not necessarily who scores first is going to win the game.
Over here, I was going to ask you, Ken, over here. It's George. Over here.
You're right.
Quite a turnover this year in your coaching staff. You know, you probably didn't anticipate having to hire 3 new coaches. And could you and Ryan comment about that and the staff and what they add to your team?
Well, I'll talk about Detroit, and Ryan can talk about Grand Rapids, because we had the same situation in Grand Rapids. You know, I think, again, you know, I'd like to think it's a credit to the job that you know, when we lose an assistant coach, you know, I hired Mike Babcock in 2005. He brought Paul McLean with him, and then I said to Mike at the time, you know, let's look around. I think Todd McClellan was on that first staff. Well, Todd McClellan, you know, when I gave Mike the responsibility to find an assistant coach, and 3 years later that assistant coach becomes an NHL head coach, the next time you have an opening, I felt more comfortable saying to Mike, bring another name to me, and I'll rubber stamp it. Mike lives in the coaching world. You know, like, he knows coaches that talk the lingo, and I'm not talking NHL coaches. I'm talking, you know, we got Todd McClellan, who was at that time was the head coach of Houston, Minnesota's farm team, and you know, so now we had a Jeff Blashill. We hired him 2 years ago. He was Western Michigan head coach. Mike, so the process works. When we need somebody, Mike and I talk. When Tom Rennie became available, it was a slam dunk for us. We both thought on one conversation, because of his experience, that we were going to add him. So you know, we lost Bill Peters to be the head coach in Carolina. Tom Rennie went to be run Hockey Canada. Keith McKittrick, our video coach, has gone on to be an assistant coach in Portland, the Western Hockey League. He wants to get into the coaching, not the video coaching, the actual coaching. So, you know, we've hired, you know, Tony Granato, who's been he's played in the league. He's been an assistant coach for a long time. For a short period of time, he was a head coach in Colorado. Recently, an assistant coach in Pittsburgh. Jim Hiller, who played pro hockey, was actually with the Red Wings a little bit in the early 90s. Then went to the Rangers. I think he went to play in Europe, finished up his career in Europe, came back to North America. The last 5 years, he's been the head coach of Tri-Cities in the Western Hockey League. Andrew Brewer was when we went to the Olympics in Sochi, we worked with Hockey Canada. Andrew Brewer was the Hockey Canada video person that Mike Babcock worked real close with for 3, 4, 5 months leading up to the Olympics, and then every day for 2 weeks, you know, in Sochi. So we've hired Andrew Brewer to be our video coach. So I'm excited about the additions that we've got on the staff. And then Ryan, we also, other than Jeff Blashill, the head coach in Grand Rapids, we also lost all of our assistants there. They went on to be, you know, Ryan can tell, they went on for better opportunities.
And as Ken said, I think it's a credit certainly to the organization and to the job that Mike and Jeff respectively have done. So Jim Pack, who had been an assistant coach in Grand Rapids through, I believe, 5 head coaches. He's done a tremendous job of helping us develop our young defensemen. He obviously played in the NHL as a defenseman, won a couple of Stanley Cups. Jim had the unbelievable opportunity to return to his homeland and go back and head up the Korean Ice Hockey Association. So he's actually sort of the Tom Rennie of Korea. He's in charge of everything from the men's national team, which he coaches, all the way down to the lowest level national team. He oversees that. And then Spiros Anastas, who a couple years ago, Jeff Blashill begged Kenny and I want to get another assistant, and I think it'll really help us out. And I've got this young, eager guy, and we viewed that position as sort of a stepping stone to another job. And we told Spiros, you know, within a couple of years, we hope you're not here anymore, and we want to move you on to something bigger and better. Well, he followed that up, and to his credit, he's the head coach at a Canadian university out in Western Canada. So while losing those 2 guys was a bit of a loss, you know, kind of the same way that Kenny turns to Mike with respect to his coaching decisions. So Jeff Blashill lives in that industry. He's been a junior coach, a college coach, and now NHL and American League coach. So he's way more familiar with who's out there. And while we talked and shared ideas on what we were looking for, the first guy he turned to was a guy that he actually hired at Western Michigan, a guy by the name of Pat Ferschweiler. And Pat played pro. He actually played forward and defense. And he was Andy Murray's associate head coach out of Western Michigan. So we're really excited about having him. And then a young guy that came in to take Spiros' job is a guy named Dave Noel Bernier. And Dave played college hockey, and similar to Spiros, is looking to kind of make that transition from doing video and on-ice work to getting behind the bench and kind of helping build his skill set. So, you know, while we lost a couple of good people down there, I think we've replaced them with a couple great names as well.
Kenny, I'm surprised nobody asked this question. I have to ask you, any progress on Mike Babcock's deal, and do you anticipate him being around here for a long, long time?
No progress. I mean, Mike and I met last week for probably the last time before the season started. We both agreed we're not going to talk about it publicly. I don't know that anything good can come out of talking about it publicly. We're going to have enough distractions without creating our own distraction. I would say to you that you know, now, are we going to talk about it? Probably. I don't know where. I don't know when. I mean, we're on the road together all the time. You know, and I'm with the team all the time, so you know, anytime, usually, you know, every day I go and close the door. We have 15, 20 minutes where we talk about, you know, the state of affairs for the day, whether it's, you know, so, you know, do we talk about it as we go along? I'm assuming we're going to. And you know, I'm looking upon Mike, like, you know, he's like a player. He's going into the last year of his contract. You know, Tippett was in the last year of his contract in Phoenix a couple of years ago, and there was tons of speculation at the end. He re-upped for 5 years, and he's the head coach of Phoenix. So players are unrestricted free agents, and they re-up with their teams. So in this day and age of social media, I'm getting back to what that gentleman asked. You know, everybody wants it now. They want the news now. They want to go on to the next piece of news. Sometimes these pieces of news take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months for the news to play itself out. And you know, at the end of the day, I'm hoping to keep Babs. I'd like to think Babs wants to stay. We have been able to find a solution to this point in time, and I'm not going to talk about it. Talk more about it than I should have, really.
Had to ask the question. Thank you very much. Hey, one final question here, unless anybody else has some questions. Going into this season, guys, what do you like most about the Red Wings, and what will be the most difficult challenge going into this season?
Well, I think it's going to be a challenge to make the playoffs. I think half the teams miss the playoffs. You know, so you know, I appreciate how hard it is to make the playoffs. You know, and it's hard league to make the playoffs. Yeah, that's goal number one. You know, that's goal number one for me. Make the playoffs. You can't go any playoff runs if you don't make it to the playoffs. Goal number two would be let's win the division, or let's certainly open at home. You know, so you're first or second in your division, and you've got home ice, and you're sort of in the playoffs comfortably, and maybe you can rest some people the last 2 or 3 games, or do, you know, and then from then it's. We were talking at this table here. The LA Kings won the Stanley Cup last year. You know, they were down 3 games to nothing in round 1. They were down 3 games to 2 in round 2. They were down 3 games to 2 in round 3, and they won 3 games in overtime in round 4. It's a close league, you know. So you might be 10 or 12 points behind somebody, but when you play that team head to head for 7 games in 2 weeks, there's not a big difference. The disparity between 1-8 today versus 1-8 in 1997 and 98 in the early 2000s, way big. Less disparity. The teams are so close. So, you know, what do I like about the team? I like that we had a lot of adversity last year. We had a lot of players with on-the-job training, and we were counting on them. They weren't just perimeter players. They were guys that we were looking to lead us on an every night basis. When we come out of the Olympic break, Pav played the first 2 games, and he didn't play a game until the last 2. I think we had 22 games. So 18 of those last 22 games, there was no Pav, and we didn't have Zetterberg at all. So 18 of those 22 games, we didn't have Pav, and we didn't have Z. We played our way into the playoffs. We won games. We beat Toronto twice. We won a big game at home against Boston. We won a big game at home in overtime against Pittsburgh. We were playing real teams, and we played our way in. So I'm hoping that the on-the-job training that the De Keisers and the Glendennings and the Tatars and the Sheehan's and the Nyquists had, and you know, we basically got a half a year out of, you know, if you look at the games played, we got a half a year for the, you know, 40, 45 games out of Helm, out of Eriksson, out of Pav, out of Z, out of Mule. you know, if we're gonna have injuries, that's part of our league. Hopefully we don't. I think one night we played Anaheim here at home and they beat us like 5-2. I think we had 9 regulars out. You're not beating teams consistently when you have 5 and 6 and 7 people out. That's just the reality of a cap world. So can you win consistently if you got a guy or 2 out? Absolutely. When you start having 5 and 6 players out, that guys that your players you're counting on and they're out for extended periods of time, I'm real proud that we got 93 points. I'm real proud that we made the playoffs for 23 straight years ago, and we finished second in the league in man games lost to injury, and we had the depth of our organization pushing us into the playoffs. And I'm hoping that depth and that continued push, and we get a little better luck with injuries if we're in the middle of the pack with injuries instead of number 2 in the league in man games to lost injury. And I think the last 2 years, I think we were number 2 or number 3 in man games lost injury in the 48-game season. I don't know the exact stats, but I would say we're probably number 1 or number 2 in the league in man games lost injury in the last 2 years combined. So if we can fall to the middle of the pack on injuries, and with the push of our organization, we're hoping to compete with all the teams in our division, and our goal is to battle for a division title. Our goal is to make the playoffs, and once you get in, it's wide open.
All right, again, Kenny Holland, how about a nice round of applause, Ryan Martin. Again, guys, thank you so much. It means a lot to the Detroit Sports Broadcasters Association. Each and every year you come down, you're nice enough to give us a preview, and also at the end of the year when you tell us about the playoffs. So again, thank you, and a nice round of applause.
Let's get a round of applause for our Master of Ceremonies, Ken Pal. 97 the ticket, the voice of the Detroit Red Wings. Thank you, Ken.
Take it away, George.
Don't forget our 7th annual Big Game Tailgate Media Luncheon. This is, again, another great event that the Detroit Sports Broadcasters Association sponsors. It's called the Big Game Banter. This year we're going to emphasize the offense. The offense of the University of Michigan and the Michigan State Spartans over the years. Sherman Lewis, Keith Nickel, Steve Smith, and Rich Strenger. I've got some brochures on your tables. RSVP now. You can call the DSBA. We'll take credit cards. You can mail a check to us. Payment in advance is appreciated. It's at the Skyline Club in Southfield on Wednesday, October 22nd. Special appearance by Paul Bunyan. Yes, Paul Bunyan's going to be there with his big axe. And it's a great menu. It's all Michigan products. You're going to really enjoy it. It's if you haven't been here yet, it's a sellout every year, right, Jim Ryan?
Yes.
Get your tickets early because Jim knows the last 2 years it's been standing room only with a great lineup of guests, again, from Michigan and Michigan State, previewing the big game. It's our annual tailgate party.